Part 1 has been uploaded onto the RTR channel. And can be viewed there. So with that said, I'll start with the review. And then I'll introduce a thought that I think is again worth sharing. As it connects with the theme of my study.
Sorry, Victoria, but the sound is not good. Can you check your headphones?
Sorry. Oh, sorry, one moment. All right. And then I'll introduce a thought that I think is worth sharing. As it connects with the theme of my study. And then I'll progress from there. All right, so as always, this is an interactive study. So I encourage everyone's participation. So if you have any thoughts or comments you want to share, please bring them up as they come to mind. So someone who was present during my last presentation, or part 1 of my presentation, can you summarize what you remember in that study? Just a key point you remember. Okay, someone says that if voting is necessary. So what was the verse that we focused on? Anyone? Yes, Joshua 24 verse 15. So I'll read it to refresh our mind. And this is quote unquote. All right. So, and if it seems evil to you to serve the Lord, choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your ancestors served that were on the other side of the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So what is the important word in this verse? Yes, it was choose, according to my study. All right, so what do we find choose to mean? Yes, to make a choice or to vote. So Joshua is commanding the people to vote. You can vote for this false god or this other false god. But for me and my family, our vote is for the Lord. How many options are present in this verse? As we recall, there are three, but the correct response I was looking for is two. The false gods mentioned are one and the same. They are example. So you either choose to worship a god made in your own image or the one true God. In other words, the candidate or leader that is God's choice or one of your own choice. And what did we learn result in voting for the wrong leader? Other than the one that God has chosen. Anyone? It results in bad outcomes. All right, so that was our review. And now that was our review. And now I'm going to change topic and introduce a subject that might seem irrelevant. But what I believe is worth sharing and appropriate. How many of you are familiar with the phrase, my body, my choice, my right, my voice? So about 4 years ago, I came across this phrase. And I thought, what a profound repeat and relarge. At the time, I didn't think much more about it and just left it in the back of my mind. However, as I was putting this study together, this phrase kept crossing my mind. and I began to ponder on it. And wonder about the depth of this meaning. And the relevance to my study. But in researching this phrase, there wasn't much information on the meaning of the phrase itself. I found was just one of many versions of the original slogan, "My body, my choice." However, what was intriguing to me was the "my voice, my choice" part. And how choice is another word for both. So you have choice, vote, voice. I'm still grappling with this thought. So I leave this open to others' thoughts and discussion. Yet even so, I'm going to share a few facts about the slogan, "My body, my choice." According to Wikipedia, "My body, my choice" is a feminist slogan. It was coined in 1969. Although the person who came up with the phrase seems to be unknown. The slogan was born during the second wave of feminism. Which began in 1963 and ended in 1989. The challenges feminists were confronting at that time were issues surrounding reproductive rights, sexual objectification, sexual harassment, marital rape, and gender-based abuse and violence. My body, my choice became a global rallying cry for feminists around the world. As these issues were not solely restricted to the US. And has been translated in multiple languages around the world. It was interesting to know that the right and access to abortion manifests one of the last struggles to achieve women's bodily autonomy. and how the fight for that right was defeated. Through the overturning of Roe v. Wade, June 24th, 2022. And that this global rallying cry represents bodily autonomy, integrity, and the freedom of choice. So this was my food for thought that I wanted to share. Any thoughts or comments? No? Okay, so Christine says that bringing out the vote related to choice. So vote related to voice, I'm sorry. Vote related to voice. Any other thoughts? Or, yeah. Would this phrase be also a synonym for the personal is political? What do you all think? Yeah?
They just.
Okay, Christine says, well, they just voted the right, canceled our right to have abortions, so it's personal and political. So back to my main focus of study. I want to read a section from the Time of the End magazine. On page 5, under the title, The Two Rivers. And this is quote number 2. All right. The two rivers flowing to two symbolic bodies of water, the Ulai to the Sea of Glass, the Hiddekel to the Lake of Fire. Two visions presenting both the story of the redeemed and the story of the lost. As these rivers flow into the sea, their messages cross the boundary line of human probation, forever separating the righteous and the wicked. We know that the Time of the End magazine was created in 1996. Which is a formalization of the message of Daniel 11:40 through 45. So we can mark the two rivers, the Ulai, which leads to a sea of glass, and the Hiddekel, which leads to a lake of fire, at the 1996 waymark. So before I continue, I want to make the point that all along the path, we have had to make a choice. We know that it's at the formalization that we see two classes of people divided. Based on their choice to accept or reject the truth. Question: what impacts our choice? Who said that? Information? Yes, information influences our choice. And it influences our vote. In 2018, we were given the message of the Midnight Cry. The two streams of information. What made the message of the two streams of information significant? For it to be taught at the time it was. We know that the message of the two streams was not new. It was an application of what had been formalized in 1996. Addressing the two rivers, the Ulai and the Hiddekel. But why did God, through Elder Tess, believe it necessary for this to be present truth? For the time it was given in 2018. Someone says because we were on the wrong side, we were being too conservative. Anyone else? Okay, let's think about this. And you're on the right side. What was transpiring? Oh, sorry, I should say what was transpired. What was to transpire in 2014? No. Yes. A change of leadership from Elder Jeff to Elder Parmenter. And how is that? And how is that going? Not well. Let's just say it was not a smooth transition of leadership. And as we progressed in that dispensation from 2014 to 2016, what was happening internally of the movement? Anyone? There's a hint. We were in the latter rain time period. So there was a flood of information being poured into the movement. Which consisted of truth as well as conspiracy theories. And at that time, it was quite chaotic. What was going on externally of the movement in 2006? Yes, the US election, Hillary versus Trump. And what was the movement's understanding in 2016 about the two candidates running for president? They both had flaws, right? What was the movement's stance on voting and on who to vote for? Our understanding was that we were not to vote, and we honestly didn't know who to vote for because we were under the impression that whomever became president would be responsible for bringing about the Sabbath Sunday law. But let me ask, by a show of hands, how many of you personally would have voted for Hillary in 2016? So we have a few people. How many of you would have voted for Trump in 2016? We have a few people. And how many of you would have voted for neither, or I should say, would have been a disengaged voter? Yeah, I would have been in that group too. Sure. Hold on. So one's reasoning for voting not for Hillary, right? Because they believed in false conspiracy theories about Hillary. So someone wants to share the reason why they didn't vote for Hillary at that time. Okay. So prior to 2018, 2019 time period, many of us had a wrong understanding of politics. And its role in prophecy. And based on the information we had, our stance on the issues would have aligned with the wrong side of the political spectrum. So we needed to be educated about the two sources of information. And understanding the correct stream to make a shift. We know there are other reasons that helped us to make a shift, but the two streams of information was one of them. So in 2018, 2019, and after, the movement has shifted onto the left side of the political spectrum. Yet we later learned that there are problems with the left as well. So as observers, we needed to understand the ethos of both sides of the political spectrum. This was essential now that the movement had shifted. And was faced with information from the left that failed to highlight and address the issue at hand: sexism, patriarchy, and gender inequality. Gender equality. Gender inequality. Yeah. So let's consider the 2016 primary. By a show of hands, how many of you would have voted for Bernie Sanders? Okay, a few people. How many of you would have voted for Hillary? Few people. And how many of you would have been disengaged voters or voted for neither? Yeah. It seems like most of us. Can someone tell me what ethos means? Yeah. Character? Anyone else? Authority? Why do you say authority? Oh, okay. It wasn't her. Okay. So I'll share a definition of ethos, and you can agree or disagree. And this is quote number 3. Ethos can be defined as the guiding force of one's culture or worldview. Sorry, I'm supposed to read. It is the core influence of one's belief and actions. It is the standard that guides a society or ideology. What is the ethos of the right wing? Anyone? Freedom. What is the ethos of the left wing? Equality. We know that freedom and equality are both important. But it's when these two principles collide that one is enforced above the other. To esteem freedom or equality above the other impacts our stance on issues, and ultimately our vote. And if we are coming from a place in which we value freedom above equality, then our choice will never be correct. And we are at a time in Earth's history where voting for neither candidate is not an option. Any questions, thoughts, or comments? So we know that 2024 is an election year. With the US being the center focus. And we are roughly 2 months before the general election in the US. Quote number 4. So reading from an article shared by Elder Parmenter on the Media Broadcast Forum. It's titled The Global Elections. Well, Washington should be watching in 2024. "2024 is set to put democracy through its most sweeping test yet. 2020, dubbed the biggest election year in history, more than 60 countries representing half the world population, some 4 billion people, will hold regional, legislative, and presidential elections that look set to shake up political institutions and wrap up geopolitical tensions. As the United States look inward, bracing for a likely showdown between President Joe Biden, now Kamala Harris, and former President Donald Trump, other countries are also preparing for possible incumbent oustings, raucous public protests, and populist movements with the potential to destabilize larger regions. We will know whether democracy lives or dies by the end of 2024. Yeah. Yes, that yes, that it dies at the end of 2024. That we will know. No, it says that what we will know whether democracy lives or dies by the end of 2024. So the presidency is not the only important office up for election. but also local, state, and national offices below the President of the United States. This is referred to as down ballot voting. Which is just as important, though less visible. Quote 5. Reading from an excerpt shared by Elder Parmenter on the Media Broadcast Forum, down ballot voting is an important way for citizens to express their preferences in terms of local policy, and it also reflects how our democracy works. By voting down ballot, citizens can express their opinion on issues such as education, healthcare, taxation, and transportation, as well as on the individuals running for office. Additionally, voting down ballot can help to ensure a more balanced representation in politics, as a two-party system often fails to adequately represent the diverse range of voices that make up our society. By voting down ballot, citizens can help to ensure that more voices are heard in the political process. Any comments, questions, or thoughts? Yes. So Kathy has shared that she realizes that downvoting is important as the presidential election. Um, Sorry, I said it wrong. That she believes that down ballot voting is just as important to vote for the presidential office. Is that? And she never appreciated that in the past. Yeah. Mhm. So David says that when voting down ballot, he found some difficulty in who should be chosen. And Christine adds, because there isn't very much information on the candidates when voting down ballot. Sorry.
Maybe it's the Republican state.
Maybe Alyssa adds that Republican state thing. Because it's also like that in Arkansas. I think it's like that kind of like everywhere you are in the state, because I also have that problem as well in California. When voting down ballot, because even though you have Democratic eh, people running for Democrats running for office, you still have to know which Democrat that's running is the best fit for that position or that office. Okay. Anyone else? I'll just add that we know that this is also important because we know that on that ballot sheet, it's not just the president that we're voting for, even though that's important. There's others that offices that we are vote as well that are listed to be voted. So I believe, and you can disagree or agree, that the upcoming US election is the great test. And as both observers and participants, we have a responsibility to vote. And the question becomes, who in the movement would vote for Trump after all we have learned, knowing that Trump is not the right candidate to choose? And this is a rhetorical question. I don't expect an answer. Many of you might say, not me. I wouldn't vote for Trump. But let me present this before you again and ask, how many of you in the movement, having access to the truth of all that has been taught, knowing that God set up the leadership of this movement. With Elder Parmenter as the leader, to guide their people in finishing up the work. That will succeed in hastening the second coming of Christ. Are ready to vote Elder Parmenter out. This is a rhetorical question. I don't expect an answer. Quoting Elder Parmenter, we are in the agitation of the Sunday law already. And the Sunday law is about to happen. And the evidence is staring us right in Paul. Any thoughts or questions? Yeah? No? Yes? What do you mean by, Claudio says that we should not vote by default. What does that mean?
That means think about
That means that,
why.
so Claudio says that we have to think about why we are voting? For one or the other. Do you mean like, as far as like, what's our motive to vote for one or the other? Hold on. What is it that you said?
Using the slow brain instead of
Using the slow brain instead of the fast brain. And you're speaking about the election, right? We know who to vote for this coming election. Is that right? Yes.
yes. I think at this point, based on experience, who is side of God.
Okay. So Emmanuel says based on the two streams of information. We know which candidate is on the side of God and which candidate is not. Yes. Audio.
think Harris is on the side of
That's a question. Do we think that Harris is, or do we think that Harris is God's choice? Anybody want to answer that? Isn't Kamala the one, sorry,
Kind of,
isn't her candidacy the one that is for the people?
Yeah,
That
for the
one?
for-
Sorry, it's hard to hear. Yes. Emmanuel says that it's not what we think, but it's what methodology presents to us. And you're saying that methodology points to who? The left. Anyone else? Yeah.
Still face the say the problem being undecided when we reach that. So that
Hold
you
on. So, um, you're saying that, say it one more time.
we face the problem of being undecided when we reach that point and end up not voting for either candidate, which is putting one of the end result.
So are you saying that we're in a place of indecisiveness where we don't?
Well, is that there is no neutrality. You are, you have, you have to make choice. And the choice is either one or the other, but no vote or neither. I don't know if I'm explaining myself correctly. But the thing is that now, today, as it is in the title of your presentation, if I die tomorrow, I want here, all of us here, that I already made up my mind who I can't see today. No, I'm not gonna wait until that day and start thinking, brainstorming all this candidate present this uh this bunch of things that benefit me personally. I cannot be thinking on myself. It has to be a collective benefit, all of it, and for the movement, because it's gonna.
Hold on. So can you just break it down?
Yes.
Just say it simple. What are you saying?
Well, that is that I cannot wait until that day to make up my mind. It has to be done now.
Okay, so Emmanuel's saying that he cannot wait until the election day on voting who he wants to vote for. To be pre- that it has to be made up in his mind now. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So do you know who you're gonna vote for that day?
Yes.
So it's made up in your mind?
Yes.
Okay. Um, okay. And so that was Emmanuel's thought. Sorry, Emmanuel. I'm so sorry.
It's the same
Emmanuel.
thing.
Emmanuel. Yes, Ava.
and based on on
hold on. So Ava's saying that, based on Elder Parmenter's presentations, that she believes that we've already voted.
And
Okay.
with those,
So Ava, are you saying that people in the movement are neutral on who they're going to choose?
no, I'm saying for those that are part. Voting.
Why did Elder Test say that Hillary was God's choice? Yes.
Because she observed the
Okay, because Sue Ellen says because Hillary, sorry, say it again,
would be preserving
would be preserving,
our institution.
would be standing for our democracy. Any other comments or questions?
Well, I think
So Sue Ellen says that in 2016, she believes that our movement was undecided. Go ahead. Because in 2016, we're in a different mindset. Because, sorry, we had the study about the last president. And people were trying to figure out which one would it be. And it didn't become clear about who should be president, who we should vote for until after. Until Elder Tess presented her studies.
now that
So that the correct stream is the left stream. Sorry.
oh,
And she believes that voting by default is not to vote. She believes we're called upon to vote. So for time, we're coming to a close. I'm going to keep going, but we'll discuss more after. So we know that we are the last generation, and our history is a line of success. And Christ is returning in our history. And with knowing this, I wanted to touch on Christ's humanity. How many of you are familiar with the acronym ASAB? Yes, Sam? Did you want to say what? Okay. All right. So for those of you who aren't, ASAB stands for assigned sex at birth. It is a term that refers to sex given to a newborn at birth. By a doctor based on biological characteristics such as its chromosomes and genitalia. The term can also be abbreviated as AMAB. Assigned male at birth. Or AFAB. Which means assigned female at birth. We know that Christ had to come in the form of humanity. To die and resurrect as part of the plan of salvation. In the form of a human being, Christ was assigned male at birth. Biological characteristics they were born with. Nevertheless, we know that it was not gendered. Christ was neither male or female. And sadly, at Christ's first advent, he had no choice but to come and identify as a male. Christ could not identify as neither male or female. Or as we understand it in our history, non-binary. And I find it interesting that even with being a male, and speaking with all authority and power, as some would say, never have I heard a man speak like this man. Christ was still rejected. Because Christ did not fit the warrior king image. The people imagined the Messiah to be. And this may come as a hard saying. But I am suggesting that Christ will return as and identify as non-binary. The person who they are, neither male or female. Christ will have a human body for all eternity. I'm not saying that I know what Christ will look like. But what I am saying is that Christ will identify an ordinary person. Any thoughts, comments, or questions? So it seems like people agree. I have a thought. It's a profound ordeal that at such a time as ours, we are called to speak up and advocate for the marginalized, whose choice is denied and voice is silent. Our vote is our voice. That indicates who we represent. And what side of the issues we stand on. And if we are to speak up and advocate for equality for all humans, should not this extend to Christ, who had no choice but to come in the form of a man? As the saying goes, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. And whatever you lose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Any comments? Yes.
I thank God. Choice.
You say, why didn't God have a choice?
I be male.
I will, other tests did studies where he discussed this or discussed that or addressed that question. Go into that. But if someone else, yes, well,
Well, yeah. He wouldn't-
so Ellen says that if Christ didn't come as a man, then no one would have listened to him. Does that suffice, that answer? Okay, yes.
Because of our.
So on it says, because of our patriarchal world, women were not listened to. So I'm running out of time, or I'm actually out of time. So I'm going to close, and I apologize for going over. So to close, as in the beginning of my presentation, I'll end. Joshua declared, "Choose you this day whom you will serve." Put simply, there are two options in this great controversy. We either choose Christ's government or Satan's government. And speaking for me individually, I vote for Christ's kingdom, which is this movement. Under God's chosen leadership. Let's, is it, you want to say something? Oh, we have others who vote for that too. Let's pray. Dear God in heaven, help us to understand why Hillary was your choice. That was the prayer of Elder Tess. And I hope now we understand. Thank you for the leadership that you have given us. This movement will succeed. And I pray that as members, that we are part of that success. Thank you for being vulnerable with us, God. For showing us who you are. In Jesus' name, amen.